Testing 1, 2. Good morning, everyone. There is a quorum in the room, so I will ask you to take your seats so we can get started. We'll start with declarations of interest. Seeing none, regrets from Councillor Kadri this morning. Confirmation of minutes 36 from May 15th, 2013. Carried? Carried? Thank you. Communications, response to inquiries as listed on the agenda, received? Received? Well, you're a fiery bunch this morning. Okay, so under presentations, item number 1, 2, and 3, there are updates on all of those, so we're going to hold items 1, 2, and 3 and return to them. Item number 4, capital adjustments and closing of projects, transit. There is a technical amendment, Commissioner Crew. Go ahead.
Thank you. It's been brought to my attention that there was a typo in the item, specifically that it listed the IT security platform as an item that is closed, when in fact it has not been completed. Therefore, the motion is that whereas the capital adjustments and closing of projects transit report recommends the closing of completed projects as outlined in document 1 of the report, and whereas the IT security platform, which is project 906434, has not been completed, thereby be it resolved the Transit Commission recommend to Council that this project be removed from the list and that it remain open, that the financial implications section of the report be amended along with documents 1 and 5 and then attached to the motion, and that recommendation 3A be revised to change the amount from $1.165 million to $0.766 million, and the technical documents are attached.
Okay, any questions on the amendment? It's just one item had not been completed. So carried on the amendment. And on the report, any questions on that report? Carried then? Carried. Okay, item number 5, 2012 Annual City Balanced Scorecard. Carried? OC Transpo's meeting and exceeding all our targets, so this is good news. So carried? Carried. Okay, item number 6, Paratranspo Advanced Booking. There are speakers, so we're going to hold that item and return to it. And item number 7, On-Board Video Surveillance System for Transit. And you're holding that? Yeah, and that item will be held. Okay, so we'll return then to item number 1. That's the chair's update. I do have a number of things that I'd like to update you on since our last meeting, starting with Canada Day. This year, for the first time, OC Transpo will be offering free service during the day and after the fireworks on Canada Day. In past years, OC Transpo offered free service after 10 p.m. This year, we'll be offering free service from 3 a.m. on July 1st to 3 a.m. on July 2nd. OC Transpo's plan to offer complimentary bus service on July 1st will result in many residents who don't normally take public transit enjoying a ride to their special Canada Day event. The cost of providing this service is estimated to be $180,000. This money will come from OC Transpo's marketing budget. I believe that it's an excellent opportunity to promote public transit to non-traditional riders. OC Transpo will be operating a special holiday schedule July 1st. It's effectively an augmented Sunday service with more trips added at peak periods, and additional late-night service to local routes will also be increased. Residents are encouraged to call 560-1000 or text 560-560 plus your 4-digit bus stop number for automated schedule information, or for more information, holiday schedules and travel planning, phone OC Transpo Information Center at 741-4390 or visit octranspo.com. The center will be open open from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. on Canada Day. The Rideau Centre Sales and Information Centre will be open from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. OC Transpo will also be distributing Presto cards there, and OC Transpo staff will also be available at an information booth on Elgin Street on the northeast corner of Confederation Square to provide transit maps and helpful tips on what to see and do in the nation's capital on Canada Day. Also, the Canadian Urban Transit Association meeting earlier this month, Mr. Manconi and I attended the CUTA meeting in St. John's, Newfoundland. The theme for this year's national event was Urban Mobility Coast to Coast. Topics of discussion and roundtable discussion were on intermobility, sustainable and long-term gas tax funding, focus on customer service, and leveraging technology. OC Transpo is making its mark as an industry leader. We were invited to make presentations on a variety of topics, including on-time transit performance, transit technology, specifically open data and the Where is My Bus live feed, as well as customer service. OC Transpo also served on a working group to help define CUTA's new mission statement, which is to inspire and influence the evolution of integrated urban mobility. As we continuously strive to improve the service we provide to our customers, it was a great opportunity to meet and exchange best practices with other CUTA members and other major transit systems from across the country. I think it's fair to say that Mr. Manconi and I both find the opportunity to meet and hear from other transit providers very beneficial. On June 1st, OC Transpo welcomed over 1,600 visitors to its industrial garage site as part of the annual Doors Open Ottawa event, proudly hosted by the City of Ottawa for the past 11 years. Cheered on by our very own OC Owl, over 90 volunteers ensured the event was another great success. Guests were delighted by the historical buses on display, as well as some of OC Transpo's more current buses, including the double-deckers, the articulated buses, and the hybrid buses. Information related to the O-Train transit information, the streetcar restoration project, Presto, and mobile travel planning tool was also available to all of those who attended. I'd like to thank OC Transpo for once again opening its doors to the public for a rare behind-the-scenes look at how all transit services branches work together to provide a safe, reliable, and courteous transit service for the approximately 400,000 transit trips it provides each weekday. I'm also pleased to report that Paratranspo recently conducted another round of stakeholder consultations on May 21st and 23rd. These sessions provided customers and stakeholders an opportunity to learn more about the newly proposed electronic fare payment system. Paratranspo staff have been researching and developing a fare management system that will offer customers a convenient, simple, and flexible tool to pay for both Paratranspo and conventional transit. The consultation sessions provided Paratranspo staff with the opportunity to engage in meaningful conversation and to listen to customers and stakeholders' concerns, experiences, and ideas on how to improve the Paratranspo payment system. A report with recommendations related to the adoption of a new fare management system will be presented to the Transit Commission later this year. And finally, on May 15, 2013, the Transit Commission carried a motion which established an ad hoc working group comprised of myself, Commissioners Hobbs and Crew, as well as staff from OC Transpo and the Rail Implementation Office to provide input on the Confederation Line governance report that was tabled at FEDCO on June 4th. The department has asked that the working group continue to assist them in developing recommendations for future Transit Commission reports related to the Confederation Line. So that work will continue. And with that said, are there any questions received on the report? Received. Thank you. And I'll turn it now over to you, Mr. Manconi.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. I have one update for you today. On July 3rd, Transit Commission is going to be considering a staff report that deals with the Confederation Line and builds on the working group information associated with 6 elements: naming of the system, individual rail lines and stations, train and station advertising, retail opportunities, the train concepts for the interior of the cars, and the exterior paint design. So on Wednesday, June the 26th, there's going to be an invite that's going out to members of the Commission and Council and the media that we're going to be hosting a technical briefing to walk everybody through the details of that report. So we look forward to that, and we look forward to the continuing work that we're doing with the working group to bring this exciting project to life. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any questions on the General Manager's update? Commissioner Tierney?
Thank you for the update, and even though this is off the topic, it was more in your chair's report, but I just had a quick question in regards to Canada Day and the bus service. In previous years, we've had sponsorship. I believe the first year we got on council, we had an issue with that as well, where we couldn't find a sponsor. Have we actively looked for sponsors to cover that cost of the free bus ridership during Canada Day?
Yes, Madam Chair. I want to clarify some information out there. In the past, we have not had sponsorship for Canada Day. Okay. We've foregone the revenue for that fixed period. I think that's been out there. Perhaps people believe that we did have sponsors and that we've had sponsors for New Year's Eve and so forth. We have actively looked for a sponsor this year, and our goal is to get a sponsor to continue with this service opportunity and not forego the revenue in the future. And in the meantime, we're going to use our marketing funds for that.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Tierney. Any other questions received on the General Manager's update? Received. Thank you. Item number 3, Presto Smart Card update. Mr. Manconi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just get the slides up here. Madam Chair, happy to be providing you with an update on this initiative. Things are going well. Card distribution as of June 12th, we've hit almost 82,000 cards, and that slide gives you the breakdown through the various distribution channels. So the general distribution is versus the targeted outreach program for the various customer groups. Madam Chair, one of the key messages, these numbers are impressive, but I know people think there's a lot of cards out there, but we want to remind everyone that of the 2,000 cards, when you peel away the 82,000 free cards that we've distributed through general channel and our targeted outreach, and when you add on the targeted groups that are yet to be distributed, such as EcoPass and seniors and so forth, there only remains 30% of the cards available. So our key message, and we look for your support in this, is get the word out, get your free card, certainly before July 1st if you can, and you get to take advantage of some of the discounts that the Presto program builds in. So there's only about 60,000 cards remaining for general distribution. After the 200,000, a reminder, there's a $6 fee on the cards. With respect to usage and performance, things are trending well. Continue our steady climb. You can see the June 12th number, about 40,000 cards actively in use, and you have a combination of either monthly passes being loaded up, 20,000 of those, and another 25,000 e-purses. 32,000 people have registered their cards. Another key reminder, register your card. If you lose it, that's a protection for you, and you won't lose what's on that card. So the other exciting metric is we've surpassed 2 million taps on our system, and we have good performance with STO. In terms of card adoption and use, 49% of the cards distributed in use. That number fluctuates depending on the cycle of past purchases and so forth. So we're not concerned of the 49%. That's a good number, and it does vary throughout our distribution program. 40% of the cards have been registered, and we're encouraging people to do that, as I mentioned. So we've got continuous steady uptake on all fronts. July 1st is approaching, so we anticipate an increase in uptake. And a reminder that on end state adoption and customer satisfaction, we have a follow-up survey process that we're going to be doing through Mr. Pepper's group on that. So this is the plan that you approved. So overall, about 41% of the cards have been distributed. Our targeted group of university students, we've surpassed that. Same with park and ride pass holders, that's been completed. And we're now into the community outreach. We've had some positive feedback from seniors on what we're doing. We're going out to them, which is helpful. We have the School Transportation Authority that's coming in August to November, and they're ramping up for that. The next major undertaking is EcoPass holders. There's about 20,000 of those, and then college students also in August and September. So those are the pre-committed cards that we're holding back for those targeted groups. So where can you get a card? A reminder, one of the easiest, most convenient is prestocard.ca. We also have them obviously at our sales and information centers. We want to thank our public library partners. They've been great. 11 public libraries, you can get your cards there. 3 client service centers, Canada, Ben Franklin, and City Hall. And then, as we promised, we're going to be out at our transitway stations, so that's the list of the locations and the dates when we're going to be actively out there distributing them. Thank you, Madam Chair. That concludes the update on that. And I know we have another meeting back-to-back July 3rd. And in terms of our numbers for reconciliation for July 3rd, all that we'll have available is the number of cards distributed, and then we'll give you another full update in August. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Manconi. There is a question. Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just quickly, I was in Toronto recently, and I had a few friends say, "Oh, why don't you use your Presto card on the TTC?" And it wouldn't have worked for me anyway because I have a pass and not e-purse. But could OC Transpo update us on the status of the interoperability with the TTC and other systems in the GTA?
Yes, Madam Chair, you gave us direction on that in the past, and the upcoming July 3rd Business Priority Plan will give you the update that Councillor Turney had asked for on where we are with going to the next version of Presto, where we are with some of the other initiatives. And the good news is that the TTC upgrade went successfully a couple of weeks ago. So our early indications are we're going to be in the fall, and we'll be more specific in the updated plan July 3rd. And you'll have interoperability on ePurse after that.
On ePurse only, correct?
That's correct.
Now, as we're getting into the summer holiday season, there might be questions about this. Is this information available online? I wasn't able to find it, but it might just not have been obvious.
Just to clarify, Madam Chair, the information that it will be interoperable or the status of where we're at on the interoperability?
I'm referring to the status to make sure people aren't going to Toronto and trying to use their cards.
I believe it's more the latter of what I said, which is the future interoperability. We would expect that people would have received the other information through reports to Commission and so on, but that is something we can certainly look at.
Okay. And also, Madam Chair, I'm wondering if there's any progress on developing a program for local employers who wish to encourage or subsidize transit use among employees. I believe last meeting I asked and the answer was TBD, so I was just wondering if there was an update.
Madam Chair, I believe our response to that was that there's a whole host of things that would be put on the list in terms of initiatives. Our focus is the approved plan by the Transit Commission to get the EcoPass piece rolled out and the rest of the customer groups. And then Mr. Pepper and Mr. Delage will then look, and as part of our annual business planning cycle, determine whether there's other initiatives that we can do, recognizing we have limited resources, and our focus is on the current distribution channels that the Commission has approved.
Okay. I will bring it up again after the EcoPass distribution. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Any other questions on the Presto update? Seeing none, received? Received. Thank you. Moving then to our next held item, which is item number 6, Paratranspo Advance Booking. There are some public delegations. Mr. Manconi, did you want to offer any opening comments?
Yes, Madam Chair. Mr. Charter is going to join me for this. I just wanted to give, there's no presentation, but just a comment that the plan that's before you, I want to give the Transit Commission assurances that it is scalable, it can be adjusted, and we are certainly very open to reporting back with the engagement of our customer groups throughout the process. This is very important to them, and we want to make sure we get it right. So I know I've received a couple of comments about what this means and doesn't mean, so happy to have some dialogue on that today and receive some direction if you so choose to do that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. There are some public delegations, so we'll start with Kevin Kinsella. Good morning, Mr. Kinsella. You will have 5 minutes. Go ahead.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. For the most part, having read the report, I was extremely pleased. And I had hoped, having been, as someone who's been involved with paratransport and having been involved with the Commission, and perhaps being hard on the Commission and others at times, to come in and just thank you for this fine report, which I will do. Definitely thank you very much. But there is one huge glaring problem with the report, and that is the 7 days possible advance booking. Now, I'm one of those people who, like, I believe it was Commissioner Johnson, travels to Toronto, and I've been to London, I've been to Winnipeg, I've been to Nova Scotia, all across this country in various places. And in those places where there's a 7-day advance booking, there's a huge problem. And I don't know if you see, but I brought a little illustration here that should have been distributed to you of an email that I received on Friday, which listed the public meetings beginning on Monday for the City of Ottawa. And frankly, were I to want to go to the Western Transit, Light Rail Transit Corridor public open house, which in fact was something I was looking at, I would have had to have known at least a week in advance to get my booking, because 3 days in advance, if almost any other city with the week advancement or with a week to book would illustrate, I would not likely get my booking, okay? And regardless of all the good in this report, what this report does is essentially force people to plan their entire lives 7 days in advance, and were you to implement this in any way, would cause people like myself who are active to be penalized by being unable to use paratransit properly, because in every other city that I've been to where 7 days is the norm, you can't get a booking 3 days in advance. You certainly can't get it 2 days in advance, and by Lord, you won't get it one. You really, really, all you're doing is moving a problem. I mean, that's what it amounts to, is you're moving a problem ahead 7 days. And I don't know how many of you plan your entire lives 7 days in advance, but knowing what it's like in politics as much as I do, even though I've never actually been a politician, I can tell you that's not always the easiest thing to do. And I think that this recommendation actually shows that regardless of any consultation, staff may not understand the needs of persons living with disabilities as well as they think they do. And it worries me when I see such things out of what I consider to be literally the greatest paratransit system in North America. I really, really appreciate the way Ottawa is. I think that were you to move to this system, certainly it would be better to live in Toronto, which also has, you book 24 hours in advance. And right now, I would say that we are miles above anywhere else in North America, thanks to the work of this commission, and I'd like to keep it that way. So please, take that recommendation off the table now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kinsella. And there is a question for you, but before we go to questions, just wanted to ask, I guess, Mr. Charter, who's sitting at the table, just arising out of what Mr. Kinsella said, and by the way, no, I don't always plan my life 7 days in advance. Sometimes I don't even plan my life 7 minutes in advance. But I know we heard from a lot of people that they wanted more certainty built in, so that if they had a medical appointment or something, they didn't want to be just the day before trying to get a ride on paratranspo. But I think Mr. Kinsella also makes a really salient argument about being able to have some flexibility built into the system if the need arises within a 7-day window. So I'm just wondering if there's some opportunity for a hybrid of the two.
Madam Chair, that is definitely something that we could look at as we develop the advanced booking system, the IVR, the online tools. Definitely we have heard from our customers that they would like some certainty, that they know that they have secured transportation with paratranspo. And we have heard, and I recognize that it's not an ideal situation, but knowing 7 days in advance, if I'm unable to secure that trip, I do have some time to make some alternate arrangements. And as I said, I recognize that that's not ideal, but that is something that we have been hearing from our customers, is that I would like to know in advance whether or not I have that trip. And but that's definitely some of the options or flexibility that we can look at trying to develop.
But could we start out having, say, for the sake of argument, 50% of the trips available for booking 7 days in advance, and the other 50% available for booking in a similar fashion to today?
Madam Chair, what I would suggest, if we move to less than 7 day or a hybrid, I'd recommend that you can look at this plan and say approve only IVR, which is there's consensus from the stakeholders on that, and then you could give us direction to go back and look at the 7 day. I'd like an opportunity to revisit with our customers, because that's what we heard from them is a number that they're comfortable with. So if we start moving away from what we heard at the consultation process, we could peel that away from this report, not approve that part, and we go back and work with them again, and we could develop a hybrid and come back again on that front. I'm trying to avoid committing to something that, because you're hearing different views. This is what we heard from the stakeholders. So my commitment to yourself and to the stakeholders is to play back what we've heard directly. This is not staff wanting to impose this. It's what we're hearing.
Okay, I understand. Thank you. Commissioner Egley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a question very much along the lines you were going, and it's sort of a follow-up. Is it a question then, Mr. Manconi, of an either-or approach, and is the either-or based on the wishes or the feedback that you received from users of the system, or is there an actual technological issue that would, I'm not saying we need to decide today, I'm just trying to get a bit more background, is it a technological issue that would hold up doing some sort of a hybrid approach?
No, Madam Chair, your key driver in all of this is capacity on the 7 day. That's a big piece of this. The IVR and the online booking, we have funds for that. We could do that. So if we're moving from 7 to 4 and so forth, no, it's not an either or. We could adjust that, and our recommendation would be that we do that in consultation with the customer group.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Commissioner Egley. Commissioner Johnson.
Yes, Madam Chair, a question for Mr. Kinsella. When I read the recommendation, I took a bit of a different, had a bit of a different reaction from the 7 day advance booking, because as you'll be aware, everyone's aware that we've received many complaints about having to book on the same day, not available, that sort of thing. They're unable to do any planning in advance. But it occurred to me that the 7 day advance booking might offer the opportunity to cut down on the number of single passenger trips, given that there'd be more planning over that 7 day period. And my thought was, well, hopefully we can use this to increase flexibility and availability. I agree with much of what Mr. Charters said. I would appreciate Mr. Kinsella's comment on that.
Okay, I think, Madam Chair, Mr. Manconi actually hit on the key. The problem is not so much whether, needing the 7 day bookings for planning. The problem is capacity, because if the capacity were there, you could plan 7 days in advance and be much more likely to get your booking even if you had to book on the same day. Okay, but the fact is, the capacity isn't quite built into the system, and I'm not necessarily blaming the Commission for that, or Council, or anyone else. The fact is, the real illustration is, this really illustrates the need for more capacity. And to give you an example, let's go to the medical appointments. My doctor does not take, normally, medical appointments days in advance. Normally, you have to book an appointment with my family physician on the same day. Now, he's made a concession because he knows it's the right thing to do to book paratransport customers a day ahead. I'm not so certain he's going to go with a week. And this is a physician that I've had for 20 years. So I'm very concerned about the entire problem of which you are speaking. And I think that this is a way that this recommendation, okay, first of all, we talk about stakeholders. Well, only 25% of stakeholders that responded to the survey said this was a good idea. That means 75% of the stakeholders didn't feel this idea was important, okay, the ones that responded to the survey. Now, how many responded to the survey, and what percentage is that of our stakeholders? So what are we really talking about? I think it's really presumptuous to say that these consultations, okay, that you had represent a large number of stakeholders, okay, and a large number of passengers. And I think that's something you better look at before even trying to implement this.
Okay, I would appreciate OC Transpo's response to those comments, and also I'm wondering if Mr. Chire could comment on his thoughts on what I mentioned about the flexibility of a 7-day advance booking option in terms of cutting down on the number of single passenger trips to make better use of the capacity that the limited capacity we do have.
Okay, Madam Chair. Sorry, would you be able to ask your question again? My apologies.
Yes, I'm just wondering, in terms of allowing a 7-day advance booking, I spoke about how I thought this might be an opportunity to cut down on single passenger trips because of the 7-day window, not all this booking at the last minute. We might be able to slot more riders in on a single trip, and would that help increase flexibility, better use of our capacity, and perhaps a cost-saving measure?
Madam Chair, that is correct. That would potentially increase the ability of people to pull multiple trips and reduce the number of calls coming in for single passenger trips. So there might be some capacity that would be built in there, and I think that would also be an advantage for our customers in that they wouldn't have to be continually calling the day before for single trips. So that definitely is a potential advantage as well for our customers.
So, I think that would be great to see, and I feel if we are able to realize that potential, it would certainly meet the strategic priorities that were referred to in the report in terms of ensuring sustainable transit service and improving operational performance if we're able to combine trips and make better use of our capacity. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Commissioner Wilkinson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kevin, I was reading this recommendation, and it says the 7-day advance is for casual bookings. I'd like your view of what would you think a casual booking would be?
It's hard to say what a casual booking would be. For example, you know, is going shopping for groceries twice a month or whatever, is that a casual booking if you don't know whether you're going to have a meeting or not? Is a date with your wife a casual booking? Or in my case, is going to the doctor, okay, a casual booking? Because, frankly, like I said, my doctor's already made a concession to fit in with paratransport. You know, really, I think a better way to put it would be a non-regular booking. But what is casual? What's casual to me may not be casual to somebody else. You know, I mean, some would say that coming here to speak to Transit Commission, for me, is a casual booking. Okay? You know, I think that to say that if it's not regular, well, then it's a casual booking, it's really, it trivializes the ability of people with disabilities, people living with disabilities who are active, to be able to participate in the community.
Okay, thank you. And I thought that probably, I have to go to OC Transpo now and say, what do you consider to be a casual booking? Because I think that's really important. It has to be very clearly defined.
Madam Chair, I'll explain it by maybe defining what a subscription booking is. So a non-casual booking or a subscription booking is a regularly scheduled same time, same pickup location, same drop-off location, at the same times, regular occurring for at least a month. It's not defined as does it have to be daily or weekly, but it has to be the same pickup location, time, drop-off location, time, regularly occurring. So all of their bookings that don't fit that category would be considered a casual booking. And as a means of clarification as well, our current breakdown between casual bookings and subscription bookings is approximately 40% of our bookings are considered casual bookings, and 60% of our bookings are considered subscription bookings, the regular reoccurring bookings.
So effectively what you're saying is all bookings would have to be done 7 days in advance, and on this.
Madam Chair, no, just the casual bookings. The subscription bookings are set up separately. They're automatic. Once they're accepted in the system, they're automatically scheduled. They would not be impacted by the 7-day advance booking.
So they're already in when you start doing this the 7 day. So everything then is booked by 7 days ahead.
After the subscription booking is set up, yes.
Because that's not what I read into this, and I think it was a bit confusing. If I get sick one day and the next morning I phone the doctor, I usually go to see the doctor that day. I can't tell you 7 days in advance that I'm going to be sick, and nor can anybody else. So how are we going to handle things that come up? I mean, you fall and break your leg and you have to see the doctor right away. You have to get to emergency. There's all sorts of, you can use an ambulance for that, but you may have to go back the next day, and then there's a lot of things that come up with short notice for everyday types of things. And how are we going to deal with providing service to those people? Because usually those are more critical ones than the ones that you can book 7 days in advance.
Yeah, Madam Chair, that would be something that we'd want to engage our clients, our customers in more detail on. But that is our challenge. Our customers are asking for, or a large portion of our customers are asking for advanced booking so that they have that certainty of a trip. But the trade-off with that is that we do lose, to a certain degree, some of the spontaneity and the ability to book at last minute. It does, from a scheduling perspective, though, however, it does help us deal with what we call day of fill-ins. Right now, with the current process, our customers book today for tomorrow. That gives them very little opportunity to cancel a trip. So every day, though, we do have trip cancellations. And so as we get those cancellations, we're calling customers or customers are calling us and asking, do you have anything open up? With a 7-day advance booking, it allows a little more flexibility for our customers as well to cancel trips, and then it allows more opportunity for us to schedule in what we'd call those day of fill-ins or those last minute fill-ins. So there is some flexibility that would be built in there, but you know, at the end of the day, we still run into the concern with regards to our capacity.
What would happen if we said, because you've got the 60% already pre-booked, you've got the 40%, which are these casual, I think they're more than casual. If we kept some of those casual ones, whether it's 10 or 50%, I don't know what the percentage is, but even to start with, that could be filled up to the day before, so that the last minute, particularly for medical trips. I think you could say a few priority trips, and I know medical trips are a priority. Because if they have to say, only if somebody's canceled can you get to your doctor when you're sick, I really wonder about that.
Madam Chair, that is definitely something that we could look at with regards to holding back a certain percentage of trips to be scheduled the day before. But presently at Paratranspo, we do not prioritize trips. It is, our process has been set up as the first people to call or get those trips. So that would be a change in our policy with regards to trip. As I said, we do not have trip prioritization.
Okay. Well, you used to have it. You used to have it for going to work and going to medical. That was to be the priority. Madam Chair, I'm just thinking that when we're starting this, we need to build in some flexibility as we're starting it out, because it's just a bit of a trial, and you're going to want to have further consultation. So I would like to have some guidance from OC Transpo on the amount, but to say in implementing this, we will keep back a certain percentage to be booked during the 7 days ahead, after the 7 days, while we're doing further consultation. I think that might get around some of the problem that Mr. Kinsella has put forward.
Okay, well, what Mr. Manconi suggested is that we approve recommendation 1 and we refer back to staff recommendation 2 for a little bit more consultation, because don't forget the majority of the people consulted said they wanted the 7-day booking. I think what we're hearing today...
I'm saying...
Wait, just let me finish. I think what we're hearing today is that there's some concern about having the entire thing moved to 7-day, and perhaps there should be some holding back, but we really, in fairness, should consult again with our customers to make sure that that's, whatever percentage we were to choose is reflective of their needs and their desires. So I think it would be best to send it back at this point and let them come back.
I actually disagree in that I think there is some real benefits to OC Transpo to get more trips if we have the 7 days. And I would rather during the consultation to say maybe it's half the trips, but at least have some start for the 7-day advance while they're doing the consultation. And then when they finish the consultation, they can refine it. Because if we take it right now, then we're right back to square one with what we have right now. We just have a different booking system, but we still have that chaos of the day before and the morning of, which is causing us to have single trips and various things that they're trying to address. So I'm just wondering if they could give us, as a rule of thumb, because it's going to take a few months to do this consultation. It's going to take a little while.
Well, we don't know that. Let's find out from Mr. Manconi how long it would take.
Madam Chair, these are very good points. I just want to go back a bit. When we talked about going out and consulting with the stakeholder group, we talked about things that they wanted that were quick and implementable right away. This was one of them that was identified. Commissioner Wilkinson is going into some very good areas that I would suggest to you are part of the overarching para review that I've talked about in the past that needs to come back to this commission in the future, where we look at all kinds of policies and practices, because para has evolved over time. Some of those things are practices, some of them are policy issues, and when you overlay the financial requirements for the various policies and practices, there's some difficult decisions that need to be made down the road. My recommendation, if we're getting into some of these subsets of the hybrid version, would be that you direct us to bring that back as part of the overall review, because we're touching on other practices and policies, such as holding back capacity, such as refusal rates, such as what do we do with cancellations, such as what do we do with people that don't pay their fees and so forth. You're getting into a whole bunch of policies, and I'm worried we're going to trip up, and we're moving from a quick win to a complicated policy discussion on the para program. My advice to you would be, if you like recommendation 1, you approve that. Recommendation 2, direct us to bring that back as part of the overarching para review, which touches on every aspect of para, which is down the road for us.
How long would that take?
Madam Chair, that will be a very extensive consultation process, so we're talking many months. It's currently not planned in the near future for us, and I'd suggest that that's probably late 2014, 2015 is when we'd be back to you.
Madam Chair, I think that's far too long to wait to make some changes. I think that we changes are usually best made when you try things out, and then if they don't work, you can repair them. I just think all you have to do on this one is say 10% of the casual trips will be held till the day before. That's all you have to do. So you do 7-day bookings for up to 10%. Then you have a small amount left the day before that you can book for the urgent ones coming up. Or if nobody's urgent, you'll have a waiting list, as you always do. And I don't see that complicated to put in place. Is that feasible?
Madam Chair, anything's feasible. I think the Commission needs all the facts to make an informed decision. We are currently refusing 80,000 trips a year. 80,000 trips are being refused a year. I think you would want to know all the pieces of that framework and the policies that drive that refusal rate, because the ask for more capacity continues to grow and grow and grow. I'm not trying to be difficult on this. I'm just trying to tell you that I think we need to bring you the entire picture of what that business is like and what are the levers and what things you can adjust or influence and what policies and practices you want to do that. I'm concerned that if I give you a number, we're going to affect other parts of the business and perhaps increase refusal rates. And so we may fix one area and then affect another area negatively.
You'll never know that if you don't try it, and trying is really important. You have recommended we do it all 7 days ahead. I'm just saying that's a good recommendation, but we should hold back a little bit. That's not a very complicated thing, and while we're doing the further testing, and it can be adapted very, very quickly. I'm not saying change what you're recommending. If you wait another 2 years, which is what you say it could be, to do the 7-day booking, we're not going to get the efficiencies that your staff have said we can get by having the 7 days. We can put more people together in their trips. This would get most people into that system, and that would open up some more service to meet the ones you're refusing. The refusal number would go down because you have more capacity if you've got several people on the bus at the same time. I'd rather go with all of them 7 days ahead and have them taking the risk of getting one than to hold off 2 years and have people not getting trips because we have all these cancellations at the last, all this chaos at the last minute. That means that people can't get to things. It just doesn't make any sense to hold off. So I'm going to move that, Madam Chair, regardless.
Okay, so I draft that and we'll consider it. And thank you, Commissioner Wilkinson. This is entirely my fault, but I thought I would allow a little flexibility in asking questions arising from the public delegation to city staff. And unfortunately, it's moved to a complete conversation about what we should be doing. So I just want to remind members of the Commission, we are on questions to delegations. I will allow a small question to staff arising out of the delegation, but if you could just be reminded that this is questions to delegations primarily and maybe not be completely off on debate at this point. I'd appreciate it. So next up is Commissioner Crew.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You've already pointed out the first comment that I was going to start with, which is I recognize that at this time we're only really addressing questions to Mr. Kinsella. The debate in the main waits to be held later on. And even there, what we're dealing with today seems to me to be only a very small piece of a very large puzzle with a much larger discussion to come later on. So for Mr. Kinsella, Mr. Manconi has suggested that at this stage then, in light of your comments and others, and I should certainly mention that I'm anxious to hear from the others as well. I trust that you have no difficulty with his proposal that we approve the IVR at this time, as long as it's not coupled with that second piece. There's no problem with the interactive voice response as a means of booking. Is that correct?
Actually, having used interactive voice response and most of the other recommendations that are in that report, I in fact, were this 7-day booking not in there, would have completely 100% come to this commission and said, listen guys, you're doing a fantastic job, your staff is great, let's implement this report as fast as you can. Okay? It's the 7-day booking thing that is the only problem I have with this report. It's a serious problem, and I'm very interested myself in the actual percentages of customers that A, responded to the survey, and B, responded in a positive way toward the 7-day booking idea, which essentially, from what I understand from the groups and from what was written in the report, is only 25% of respondents.
Okay. Now, one of the suggestions that's being made is maybe the way that we will address this is through holding back a certain number of spots. And of course, your concern is related to capacity and that those late trips are not going to be booked. You outlined the situation of your doctor, and I understand that. My family physician is the same way, that she'll take bookings basically the day of, and that's it. I also see a specialist, and that I've been waiting 6 months to get an appointment with the appointment's been scheduled 6 months in advance. Were I reliant on paratranspo and I knew that 6 months in advance that I had that appointment, then surely in some situations, some capacity, being able to book 7 days in advance would be an asset. Would you also agree with that? As long as there was still, we address the capacity concerns on the day of.
You know, the truth is, no, I wouldn't, because frankly, if you call in at the time you're supposed to call in, be it 7 a.m. or 9 a.m., you rarely do have trouble getting your bookings. It's those people that, for whatever reason, call in later in the day, whenever, almost always they can't get their bookings. So, as long as you, there shouldn't be the type of problem that you're describing, particularly if you implement the rest of the report. Because frankly, the rest of the report gives many more options for booking in terms of how you book. And frankly, it was very well done, very impressive, and will once again, you know, that portion of the report will make us a leader even in the area of booking.
Okay. Just arising from the comments that you've made through the chair for Mr. Manconi, Mr. Kinsella has cited the fact that 25% of the respondents said they wanted advance booking, it would be useful. Is it fair to say then that only 25% were in support of that, or is it more accurate to say that 25% recognize this as a priority?
Madam Chair, through the consultations, we asked a series of open-ended questions, and one of the questions was, how would you improve the current booking process? And that is where 25% of the respondents identified as by far the number one issue being, look at advanced booking. As well, through that consultation process, there was discussion, there was roundtable discussion following that question being posed. And the majority of people through that discussion did indicate that that was something that they would think would improve the booking experience for themselves.
Okay. And then finally, also arising from those same statistics in the consultations, Councillor Eglai suggested that this is not necessarily an either-or proposition, but surely there was some recognition in those consultations from the para-users of the tensions between advanced booking and day-of booking. Now, can you simply tell me if any kind of consensus was reached on that tension, or is it that there are simply two camps that are going to disagree?
Madam Chair, I think we're at a point now where we have some competing demands and competing priorities on our service, and no, I don't think there was any sort of consensus reached.
Okay. Thank you for those comments. I'm certainly looking forward to hearing from the other delegates as well. Mr. Kinsella, I certainly hope that we offer you a subscription booking for attending OC Transpo Commission meetings. Thank you very much.
I certainly hope you don't have to. Frankly, I enjoy each and every one of you. I think you're doing an excellent job, but you have better things to do than listen to delegations.
That's enough, Kevin. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Commissioner Crew. Commissioner Eglai.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Kinsella, and I don't want to put you on the spot because, you're not here on behalf of a group, but you are a representative user of paratranspo, and I just want to know what your take is on Mr. Manconi's suggestion, taking very much into account the timeline that he's put forward, that if we approve recommendation 1 today, and we put off recommendation 2 for further consultation and discussion, it could be, I think the term used was many months down the road before he would be back to commission with recommendations. And sort of as a representative para-user, the issue that needs to be resolved can it wait that long? Or let me phrase another way. Do you want to wait that long to perhaps get a more comprehensive solution, or do you want, again, to quote what Mr. Manconi said this morning, a quick fix or an easy, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Mr. Manconi, but it's something that, a
Quick win.
Quick win, thank you. So, where do you think the priority should be? Do you think we should, as a user of the system, do you think that we should be waiting for that period of time and get something a bit more comprehensive, or should we go for some sort of a quick win as Mr. Manconi has characterized it?
Well, I honestly think that if you're going to try and implement this, because there may be potential, there will be potential impact, there may be some legal impacts that you might want to look at from, and I'm not talking necessarily myself, but various people are impacted in many ways, okay? I think if this is the way that the Commission is desirous of going, the only way to be fair to OC Transpo and staff is to take the time to really look at the issue and do the consultations before you try and implement something, because otherwise there's all kinds of avenues that open up potential problems for OC Transpo.
So as a para-rider, you're prepared to, in a sense, accept Mr. Manconi's recommendation on this?
Well,
and again, I'm not trying to make you speak for the whole community. I'm just...
I think more the point is, okay, that I'm not prepared to accept a 7-day booking rule under any circumstances, okay? So I'm looking at all kinds of avenues along with other people, right? And there are many available to us, so to be fair to OC Transpo, you have to give them the time to explore these avenues, okay? And by doing that, perhaps you give OC Transpo the time to come to consensus with people like myself, which is something I would prefer to do rather than go into other avenues.
Okay. No, that's fair. Thank you for that. Now, Mr. Charter, a question flowing from a question that Commissioner Crew asked you. You talked about open-ended questions, and I don't know what those questions were. They're not in front of us, but I guess what I'd like to know is, when people indicated a preference for a 7-day booking, was there enough context in the balance of the questions for them to understand that they would be giving up the flexibility of the current booking system completely? In other words, did they understand it was an either-or situation, or would they have understood from your various questions that there was still going to be that kind of hybrid option available?
Madam Chair, prior to the roundtable discussions in which we posed the questions, staff did provide a presentation to the participants, and they did outline some of the advantages and some of the potential drawbacks of an advanced booking system. I'd like to say I believe it was that this issue was potentially there, because we did talk about it. This doesn't create additional capacity. This is about creating some additional flexibility in advance. But the drawback would be potentially that we would reach our capacity early on in the 7-day window versus the day before.
I guess what I'm getting at, Mr. Charter, did anybody say to you, if we go this way, do I lose the ability to book my doctor on the day of? Was that question ever out there on the table and discussed?
Madam Chair, that question is always there, because presently we are refusing trips. Whether we're at a 1-day booking or a 7-day booking, we are refusing trips, and that's something that's very much a major issue for our customers, is that 80,000 trips per year we're unable to accommodate. So that is a question that is constantly being posed regardless of the discussion.
I understand that, Mr. Charter, but right now we're refusing trips because of capacity. The proposal in front of us would refuse trips because of process. It's a very different thing. So that's what I'm asking you. Do people understand that they would be voting in effect for a system that would take away the flexibility that they currently have when they said, yes, pick me for the 7-day advance booking? Did they understand they would lose the flexibility for what you call casual? And I frankly think that's a term you need to change going forward, because I think that denigrates what people are using the system for if they have a doctor appointment or a family emergency. So I think that if you take friendly direction, take that right off the table and find a better term. But I don't think we still understand whether people that you consulted understood that it was an either-or situation.
Madam Chair, I believe that our customers did understand that, for the simple reason that, through the conversations, one of the things that constantly comes up is, I would like to know in advance whether or not I have a trip. And if for some reason, if I'm unable to secure a trip with Paratranspo, I have the flexibility, I have a time to make alternate arrangements. And as I said earlier, I recognize that that's not an ideal situation, but that is something that we continually hear from our customers, both through the consultation and on a daily basis through either our booking agents and our operators on the street.
I don't want to be difficult, so I'm going to ask Mr. Manconi now the same question, because I'm not getting the answer. Did the people in the consultation process understand, by saying we want a 7-day advance booking system, that they would lose any ability to use the current system? In other words, to deal with medical appointments, family emergencies, that's simply off the table if we go with that recommendation? It's a simple question. Were people aware of that when they said we want the 7-day system, that would be the only system that they would have access to?
Madam Chair, yes, there was trade-off discussions at the consultations. I wasn't at every one of them. I was at one of them. And we were very clear that we wanted to hear and make sure people understood what this meant and did not mean. There is a whole bunch of trade-offs that occur with this decision, and hence my comments about I want to make sure that we know all the variables associated with making a decision on this if we change it from the 7-day, because you're into, if you hold back certain volume, you're going to talk about, are we going to do refusal rates on first come, first serve, or do we want to go ambulatory, non-ambulatory? There was trade-off discussions at the consultation.
Okay, thank you for that. And don't take these questions that I'm necessarily against your recommendation, but I'd like to give some friendly direction. I don't know if Mr. Kinsella was at those consultation tables, but I think he should be. I think he comes to us, he gives us good information, and I don't know if you've reached out to him in that respect, but I think that would be a wise thing to do if he's prepared to participate. And he's nodding his head, I think, that he's prepared to participate. Is that fair, Mr. Kinsella?
In those kind of consultations, I will say that I did miss the consultation due to illness on the whole Paratranspo fare problem that recently happened, and I was booked to go into that, so I want to apologize to the Commission for that. But I'm prepared to consult staff or anyone at Paratranspo or OC Transpo, any politician at any time, regardless. I don't have to agree with anyone, okay, but I'm certainly open to any type of consultation that happens.
Thank you for that. I think one of the things we like about it is you don't always agree with us. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Commissioner Aglai. Mr. Manconi, just looking at the report, it says 25% of respondents suggested that an advanced booking process should be established. I don't know if 25% is enough to make a wholesale change of 100% of our trips from a day booking system to a 7-day advanced booking system. So I think there's some trepidation in the room moving forward, and I think Commissioner Wilkinson has a motion. I'm just wondering, if we sent this back for 2 weeks, if you couldn't do some form of consultation on this specific issue and bring it back to the July 3rd meeting.
Madam Chair, I apologize. I cannot commit to that. I can't move this so quickly in 2 weeks. Especially with the consultation that I've heard, and just, To clarify, we reached out to all our subscribers on Paratranspo. We advertised on our vehicles and so forth. I would want to come back with consultation with the para customers. So to move this in 2 weeks, there is no way we can do that. We are talking, I'd need a couple of months easily, and given our legislative agenda, July we have reports coming, August we have reports coming, and there's preparatory work with that, and we have Presto rolling out, and the Confederation line is consuming us now. So I cannot commit to 2 weeks turnaround on that. I apologize.
Did you say 2 months?
I said we would need months, a few months to do this properly. Okay. We would need to it's taken us months to get here with this. With the consultation, we need months to go back and think through all these pieces. And remember, there's other perspectives of people that do want this. I know in 2008, Mr. Barrell did some outreach on that through surveys, and there was 67% of the people wanted advance booking. So there's other information. On the 25%, the remainder of that was a bunch of other pieces that add up to the 100% in terms of other things that they would like to see. So this is the one that stood out.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Manconi, and thank you, Mr. Kinsella, for being here. Our next speaker is Kevin Smith, Worthy Lake.
So I pre-prepared things. At the end, I'll get someone to help me read, but I'm hiding the answer question afterwards.
Okay, perfect.
My name is Kevin Smith, Worthy Lake. I am verbal, but I'm having this read by someone else to ensure my
Ms.
question.
Black, can you just speak right into the microphone? We're having trouble hearing you.
Okay. My name is Kevin Smith, Worthy Lake. I am verbal, but I'm having this read by someone else to ensure my questions and views are fully understood on the very important issue of Paratranspo advance booking. I'm a regular user of both Paratranspo and conventional transit. In the 13 years I've been in Ottawa and hundreds of Paratranspo casual booking requests, I have been unable to secure a booking with Paratranspo just once, when I've called to book between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. the day before, and that was because it was Mother's Day and therefore a high number of Sunday bookings. I do not understand what the issue is with the current booking timeframe. Your report says 25% of respondents suggested that an advance booking process should be established. That tells me that 75% of respondents do not want or see a need for advance booking. Why are we doing something that 75% of people don't want? The plan is fixing something that is not broken. My family doesn't want to have to plan our lives a week in advance of everything to ensure our bookings are secured. This is unacceptable and unnecessary. It leaves no room to have any spontaneity, deal with weather events, or last-minute medical appointments, which we may need to arrange for our newborn daughter. For example, you could never book to go see a movie because showtimes are never available a week in advance. I will need to book many trips just in case, just to cancel them later when I can assess whether or not I need to use Paratranspo. Your report does not indicate if the users who are suggesting advance booking are wheelchair users or ambulatory users. It is my hypothesis that it's the ambulatory users who are having more trouble booking trips. Maybe we need advance booking just for ambulatory users and not for wheelchair users. The fact is, if a wheelchair user calls for a booking the day before his or her trip, in 99.9% of cases, the trip is secured or secured later by going on standby. 7-day advance booking would make Paratranspo less accessible.
Thank you very much, Mr. Worthy-Lake. Are there any questions for the delegation? Commissioner Bowes.
Just a quick question. I'm not sure if I understand this completely, but are you suggesting to differentiate? I mean, you're suggesting to differentiate between those who are ambulatory and those who aren't. But doesn't that put one group at a disadvantage over other groups? I'm sure you're not suggesting to discriminate against one group over another, right?
The day that one group may have problem, the other group does not have the problem. Because right now, we already discriminate between the two groups. One group can come in early, and they can get what I understand, can get what they want, and then the second group has to wait for all those other people to vote first, and then they get the job rather than get what the leftovers are from the wheelchair. So we already do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Blois. Any other questions for the delegation? Thank you again for your comments, Mr. Worthylake, for being here today. Okay, so now we have a motion from Commissioner Wilkinson that recommendation 2 be amended by adding with 10% of trips be retained for day before bookings. Commissioner Wilkinson, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. I've listened to this carefully, and I recognize that the ones that need the day before booking, we usually have to do that. I also recognize that if we got as many as possible 7 days in advance, that you can make greater efficiencies in use of the vehicles, which means it'll free up even more spots. So what this is, I look at this as an interim step. By taking, you said 40% were casual bookings. So if we take a quarter of those and say they'd be done the day before, that will leave a fair number available for those who have the last-minute appointments that they can't make in advance for whatever reason. I'm not putting down the reason. And while you're doing your additional investigations, which Mr. Manconi said could even go into 2015, which is a long time away from now, but that means at that time we can make complete changes to this if it's not working. I think by trying it at the 7 days, we'll see if it actually does free up a lot more spaces. I think that's the key point that I would like to see on it. But I don't want to hinder those people who need the last minute. So that's what this is, a suggestion of doing it. And because it's a percentage, it's just a number, if we're finding out that still creates problems, can we adjust it very quickly, as opposed to the overall investigation, which I agree should take time, because you want to make sure it's done so that it's going to have the long-term benefits. So that's why I've suggested this, and I think it will help out in the interim. And if it doesn't work, if it's causing problems, you can come back at any meeting and fix it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Wilkinson. Commissioner Tierney.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess my question is to staff. I've never been comfortable with doing, whether you call it policy or math on the fly. Would this impact anything that currently is in place right now? Would this actually push people off buses if we reserve this 10% at this point? Because my understanding is what we have in front of us today, the two items. If we go ahead with item number 1, it's not going to slow the progress of the online system and the IVR, which people really want badly, and it's going to help us out. And we can hold on item 2 for future. And I would support that. But this 10%, I'm very nervous. This could actually create bigger issues for us. Can you comment on that?
Sorry, Madam Chair, we're just thinking through the scenario. I think a bit of it depends on how we handle the 10%. Is it first come, first serve, or do we want to ask that customers state that it's related to a medical appointment and we'd hold that back for a medical appointment? So it depends on that. It's hard to say.
Well, it seems like I'd hate to make a hasty decision just based on these numbers. I mean, is it 5%? Is it 2%? I don't feel comfortable supporting this. I'll be going with the original recommendation, supporting item number 1. If we can ask for a split off, Madam Chair, to split items 1 and 2 in the report. I'll be supporting item number 1 and deferring on item number 2. But what we have in front of us right now by Councillor Wilkinson, I'm very nervous that we've selected a percentage out of the air, and we'll find ourselves getting ourselves into trouble and people not getting seats on buses. Thank you.
Okay, we've had a request to split item 1 and 2, and we will do that. Commissioner Tierney, I'm sorry, my attention was divided. Were you asking for deferral on item number 2? Yes. Okay, so deferral does take precedent. So we'll now be speaking to deferral of item number 2, and Commissioner Crew, you're next.
I'm not sure I do. I think I'll take...
Okay. Commissioner Blowis.
I wasn't going to speak to deferral, but I do have a question on with respect to the report. So, and unfortunately, I may have missed it. I was preoccupied outside the door for a while. Just a question. I don't know if you had a chance to read the Stephen St. Denis letter that was submitted to the Commission with respect to what he thought were the good, the bad, and the ugly of the booking system. And he makes some particular recommendations that I thought were interesting, and unfortunately I don't know enough about the booking system since I'm not a user and I don't experience the ups and downs of it. But one of the things he talks about is he talks about the information line doubling as the cancellation line. And he says that this really should be a separated automated cancellation line, and he talks about how difficult it is to get information on let's say the location of the bus, or whether the bus is actually coming, or whether he's missed it. 2 points that he makes. Is anybody looking at those points, and are they being addressed in any way?
Yes, Madam Chair, we did receive his correspondence. That certainly got our attention, where Mr. Charter has confirmed he's reaching out to him to see what his suggestion is there and whether we can do that.
So he will get a response, and if there's merit, or not merit, but if there's an ability to do something, we'll be advised at some future date.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Blowis. Commissioner Crew.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. It took me a few minutes to get my head around what was speaking to the issue of deferral. So the first question that I do have for staff, if we do go for deferral of that, is given the legislative agenda that Mr. Manconi has outlined, he's expressed the view that he certainly could not come back in 2 weeks having examined this issue, and I think I'm hearing that even 2 months would be difficult. So if we opt to defer item 2, Mr. Manconi, what is the earliest that you realistically think, looking at this piece in isolation and doing whatever further consultations are required, that you would be able to bring it back on the Commission floor so we could look at this issue again?
Madam Chair, Troy and Mr. Charter and I were just talking, and with an assumption that we would do 1 day of consultation with the customer group, and that we would also, as part of that consultation, put the question to the group about how we want to handle any reservation, 10% or whatever that percentage is. Do we go with first come, first serve, or medical appointment prioritization? October, November-ish is what we're looking at when you map out holiday schedules and everything else. I want to do the consultation, and that is a full day, and there's a ramp-up period. So, I could commit to end of October being back to Commission with that piece.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And then it relates to sort of my view of deferral, although it addresses Councillor Wilkinson's motion. If the clarification were provided on her motion, say, for example, that 10% that be held back be 10% held back sort of in accordance with current booking procedures, if that motion were approved instead, do we have the capability of instituting that now on the same timeline that the 7-day advance booking would otherwise be implemented? Or would you prefer that those consultations and that you have time to examine that issue first? Do we have the capacity, first of all, to do it now, the capability?
Mr. Charter has confirmed if this was direction today, we would implement it with current rules. My recommendation to you would be that you ask us to come back and give you a report on that, a memo or verbal or whatever, on how that's working down the road. So if you directed us to do this today with current rules, without any consultation, we'd quickly mobilize to implement that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Crook. Commissioner Eglak.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Manconi, this is a follow-up question to something that Commissioner Tierney raised, and in moving that essentially that this matter be deferred, and that was the 10%. So the question I'm asking you is, can you, because I see some merit in doing something hybridish going forward until you have the opportunity to sort of go out and ask all those other questions that you need to ask. So can you give some comfort to the people around this table, or some rationale as to why 10% may or may not work? Is that what we should be asking for? Should we be asking for a different number?
So Madam Chair, I think we're back to what I was trying to tell the Commission earlier. What's the number, and what's the math behind the number? Is 10% right? I don't know. I have to overlay all the variables into that and give you that information. Is 20%? I cannot do the math for you today and justify whether 10%. I would suggest that if you start with 10%, and we'll report back on that. We can give you some verbal updates as we progress through the coming months in terms of how that's going, but I can't tell you whether 10% is the right number.
Well, let's try it this way then. If you got direction today for 10%, how soon would that hybrid system be implemented?
I believe that was Commissioner Cruz's question. We would implement the 10% right away.
So like tomorrow? Well,
sorry, Madam Chair. Just Mr. Charter reminded me that the sequence on the rollout is you do IVR and phone first, and then you do the 7-day with the 10% holdback. So per the report, I believe the IVR, I'm looking to Troy, IVR and online goes.
We'd be looking at following approval of the report, developing and implementing the IVR and online, as soon as possible. We didn't put a timeline specifically in the report. We know that our customers are asking for this, and we would try to expedite that and get it done as quickly as possible. Following that, we'd be looking at doing a marketing campaign, because we know that from looking at other properties going to an advanced booking system, call times increase. So we would need to shift people from calling the booking agents to the other alternate booking methods, and then once we saw that shift, then we would look at implementing the advanced booking. And then it's at that time where you could implement the 10% holdback for the day before, because right now our present booking system is the day before.
okay, no offense, but that answer is as clear as mud. There's no specific, there's not even any general dates in there. As soon as possible, and then we'll do this after, and we have to have a rollout period and advertising period. What I'm trying to help you here, and trying to help the Commission. What I'm trying to get at is, if it was implemented, what would be a reasonable period of time for it to be in place, for you, as you said, Mr. Manconi, to come back to us and give us a progress report. I'm thinking, try it out for 3 months, 6 months, something like that. But if it's not even going to kick in for 6 months with this change, then that impacts on our decision. So I need to know with some specificity when you think it would start, and then what you think a reasonable period of time would be before you came back to us and said, this is how we think it's going.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. I apologize for the confusion. So IVR and online, with the current plan, would go first. That's sometime in 2014. It's a technology project. You see the costs associated with that. Our recommendation is you do that first, then you do the communication, then you would go to, if we just stick with what was in the report first, you'd go to the 7-day booking rules. You need the IVR and online first. Otherwise, you'll start to impact call times with the if you implement the other policy change. So you're into 2014 one way or other. Otherwise, you're stripping away IVR online if you want to get to the 7-day hybrid version a lot quicker, but you're going to impact call times.
Okay.
So you're into 2014 with IVR and online. Then you would implement the 7-day booking rule and hold back 10%. So it's 2014 before you see that.
Okay, well, I think that's a lot longer than anybody around the table thought it would take to do based on earlier answers. So here's another question for you. If you went ahead and implemented IVR as soon as you can, and that you're telling me that will be sometime in 2014, does that not give you enough time while you're implementing IVR to do whatever consultations you need to do with the user groups and come back and give us a recommendation as to whether it's a 7-day or a hybrid or back to the original system? I mean, we're
Yes.
just... Yes. Okay, perfect. Now we're getting some clarity. So when you say sometime in 2014, are we talking the beginning, the middle, the end? Can you give us a quarter?
Madam Chair, with technology projects, the worst thing you do is give a date. I cannot give you a date. I need your governance approval. Then I have to take this to corporate IT because it impacts the phone lines, it impacts the capacity there, and we need to phase all that out. So it's not that we wouldn't like to give you a date. I can't give you a date yet because we need your approval to proceed, and then we map out all those timelines, and we can certainly report back in the future on the date on when IVR and online would be operational. It's sometime in 2014. I know the chair asked me that before in terms of, John, can you not be more specific? And I can't at this time. There's too many variables to that.
Well, Madam Chair, my suggestion would be that we approve the IVR today, and or recommendation 1 rather, and that we give direction to Mr. Manconi and his team to report back to us on 7 days, current system, hybrid, by no later than, I would say, and I can see Mr. Manconi looking at me because I'm going to give him a date, no later than the end of first quarter of 2014.
Okay. So is that it, Commissioner Egli?
That would be my suggestion, Madam Chair.
Okay. When you said first quarter, you were talking about 2014.
Yes, we're already past the
And
first
the
quarter.
deferral motion says in 2 months. Is that correct, Commissioner Tooney? It says November? Oh, okay.
I think they can do it by November. That's my point.
Okay,
That's what I see. We're not even going to have IVR by November, so I don't disagree with your principle. I just think the timeline's not going to work.
Okay. So we have a motion to defer. The motion is to report back to the Transit Commission in November. Mr. Manconi, my question is, why does IVR have to come first and the advanced booking system follow? Why can't those be done concurrently?
Madam Chair, what we've seen from other properties that have implemented an advanced booking process is that their call times are significantly longer. Customers book potentially multiple trips. They're looking for more options. And in the research with the other properties, we're seeing that their average call times are approximately, in the 7 to 8 minute mark. Presently at Paratranspo, our call times are averaging 2 to 3 minutes. And some of the feedback we have heard from our customers is that it takes a while to get through the busy signals, and we were very cognizant that we don't want to implement an advanced booking and impact another element of the customer service, which is the booking. So bringing in IVR and online tools, which are something our customers are asking for, we can shift some of those calls to alternate booking methods to reduce the call volumes, which would hopefully keep them at the same levels they're at today, if not lower.
I'm sorry, I'm just not following why we couldn't go to the 7-day advance booking now concurrently with the implementation of IVR. I just see them as apples and oranges. I don't think that one has to follow the other.
Madam Chair, we would anticipate that with implementing 7-day advance booking, each call that comes into our call center would be a longer call, so more customers would be on hold for longer periods of time. And it would take them longer to secure that trip. So if we could transfer a percentage of those people to online or booking, you would reduce the number of calls coming in, and then you'd be reducing the amount of the length of time it takes for someone to talk to a booking agent.
So it needs a full implementation of IVR before we even start the implementation of the advanced booking.
Yes, Madam Chair, because the key there is you want to push as many customers to online as possible to free up phone capacity, and then you recognize that there's people that do not want to go to online or can't go to online, then they have the voice recognition system. If you do it out of sequence, you'll start to stretch out the call wait times, which is a major complaint we have right now. So there is a sequence to the rollout of the technology, and then you implement the 7-day booking after that.
Okay. Well, based on that information, I'm going to support Commissioner Tierney's motion to defer this until November with the direction to city staff to go out and consult again further on a hybrid model such as the one that Commissioner Wilkinson is putting forth, that a percentage would be held back for day of or one-day booking, and find out if they would prefer some form of a hybrid to an either-or situation which was presented here today, because I think there's pros and cons to both, and I think a hybrid could probably serve the users of paratranspo best. So on the motion, there's a speaker's list, sorry. Commissioner Blais.
I'd like to call a vote on the deferral, please.
Thank you. No, okay, so Commissioner Wilkinson has withdrawn her motion. Okay, on the basis of the information given, Commissioner Wilkinson has withdrawn her motion. So Commissioner Tierney's motion is carried? Carried. Thank you. So on item number 1, though, we will pass item number 1. Carried? Okay. Okay, item number 7, on-board video surveillance system for transit. Mr. Manconi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, this report deals with the feasibility and costing associated with the use of cameras for transit operations. By way of background, I just want to confirm that we are very strongly committed to providing a safe and reliable transit system for everyone, our customers and our operators and our staff that work on our system. We have a wide range of safety and security initiatives currently in place, such as the TransSecure program that you're aware of. And then there's other programs that, with some recent dialogue from our community stakeholders, we have but have not done a particularly good job of promoting them, such as the Night Stop program, Taxi Link, our passenger assistant alarms, and emergency phones. This report, the genesis of this report is in our 2012 departmental priority listing. We committed to look at cameras on our fleet and report back to the Commission on our findings. The next few slides summarizes the findings of our work. There are studies that have shown the introduction of surveillance system has a modest impact on crime prevention. They also, we've seen data that suggests that surveillance systems by themselves do contribute to a sense of increased safety and security, that just on their own do not do that. They have to be part of an overall program, and those jurisdictions that have implemented video surveillance have done that as part of a broader safety and security program. We also would recommend, if we were to proceed, that it should form part of our overall program, and a solution that meets our requirements is feasible and can be supported by an established vendor network and current technologies. In the report, Madam Chair, we costed out 5 different options, and these are 6-year aggregated costs, which I'll provide some further detail in a future slide, but it's a range of everything from a portion of the fleet to the entire fleet. So on the low end, we're at about $2.3 million. On the high end, it's about $16.3 million. Any expansion to our use of surveillance cameras would complement what is being planned for in the O-Train and the Confederation line, and a phased program can be implemented subject to budget availability and resourcing. On a very positive front, the current wireless bus network infrastructure that this organization has been very proactive on and is leading bus operations in North America is available and has capacity and reduces overall costs. In other words, those costs would be significantly higher if we did not have the Smart Bus program and the infrastructure that you approved and have implemented. This slide gives you an overview of some jurisdictions, how long they've been using the systems, what state. They're in various ages, age categories, and various levels of technologies. And we spoke to I believe, all of these as part of our work. In terms of consultation, wide range of consultation, operational staff, our legal department, I want to thank them because privacy issues is a very important facet of this element of this project. Transit law, ATU staff, and other jurisdictions that have implemented the technology. So the benefits of onboard cameras include incident response and investigative support. They are very helpful for fraudulent claim prevention and reduction, although unfortunately statistics don't exist for what that saving is. So it's this industry is evolving, and when we talk to other transit industries, we said, so how much are you saving on claims? And they're saying they are, but they can't quantify it to any accurate level. Incident deterrence through increased accountability and enhanced operator and customer safety and security. The elements of an effective program, there's 4 facets to it. There's consultation and communication. You want to do this with your customers as part of the process and the rollout. You want to have clearly documented policies and procedures, very, very important for privacy and retention and so forth, and who has access to information. You want a sound technical implementation. This is a multi-month, actually on a fleet of our size would take over a year to implement. And you need dedicated resources to support and sustain the program. So once you're in the camera business, and you'll see the number of cameras we'd be recommending if we were to roll this out, you need to have resources throughout the various elements of the program. And obviously in the middle is your safety and your security focus of your program. The report speaks to various elements of the costing and the components, cameras, interior, exterior cameras. There's the recording devices, and then there's the retrieval hardware and software that's used as part of the program. So when you look at a system, there's a wide menu of elements that you can incorporate. You want to optimize coverage in each bus or vehicle that you're installing these in. We hear of cheaper systems. I know there's been some reporting on that, and when you look at the detail, they have partial coverage on their fleet. Our fundamental belief is if you're going to do this, you do it right, and you include full coverage of your vehicle. The quality of your systems, the retention and retrieval capabilities are very, very important for investigations and response. Your components are robust. And the next bullet, integrated access control safeguards, very important. You have to know who has access to the information, and that all has to be documented and approved and in a policy framework. There's also the ability to have trigger alarm-based activation for streaming video, and also there's optional enhancements for streaming video to mobile devices. So there are four configurations. The basic plus remote downloading, and then option 3, which is the recommended option, basic plus remote downloading and remote monitoring. One of the things I'd like to point out on the costing is we challenged the team and said go back and how much cheaper is the basic, so option 1, and because we have the infrastructure in place, the savings are going to a basic system does not generate any substantial savings. It's very, very marginal. That's because our infrastructure is in place to do option number 3. Option 4 is an enhanced version that gives you mobile monitoring, and that there is a cost to that, and we're not recommending that. So that's the preferred option. With respect to considerations for both the feasibility and the implementation, make sure you know your camera requirements, your video monitoring, power and space, cabling, workstations, privacy and policy development, and so forth. This is important because when you look at the number, and I know there's been a reaction to how expensive this is, we got right down to the level of detail that we needed to bring to this commission, so you had the accurate and most precise cost estimate so that it's the all-in number, right down to how many people need to be trained on the system. So that's the level of granularity that we did with this. This is a sample of an articulated bus. It shows the cameras. You'd have one forward-facing, and then you have the interior cameras. We're not recommending. There is a premium to exterior cameras, so that's an option that some jurisdictions are considering. The cost analysis that I mentioned earlier on, 5 options, full fleet, and then there's we broke the fleet into the various elements and tried to or costed those out based on the numbers associated with that, both the vehicles, the state of the vehicle, and the number of cameras. And the costs reflect internal the capital, the operating, and the reoccurring operating costs. 6-year life cycle. After 5 years, you're replacing the system. That's what the industry is telling us. You're in the business and you need to keep the technology current. The cameras start to fade out and so forth. So there is a reoccurring capital life cycle replacement program. That's the cost estimate that's listed in the report, and there's a wide range of options. We also did consider and quickly discounted. We said, what about going a route-based approach? That doesn't work for us because our buses move around through the fleet, so we can't guarantee a certain route has the same bus with cameras on it. So we approach it this way in terms of various elements of the fleet. So there's your range, and it's the implementation capital costs, the one-time, and then the ongoing operating, so your costs over the 6 years is off on the right-hand side. The O-Train and the Confederation line have spec'd in surveillance systems, and they're tied to the current contracts. So our recommended strategy, Madam Chair, is that we recognize that the system can contribute to a positive impact on safety and security. Our recommendation is an incremental approach. O-Train and Confederation line will have the surveillance system involved in that, and Mr. Babe and Mr. Delage are actively involved in that process. The pair of vehicles that we're currently scoping out for procurement, we're going to include the basic capability to install cameras at a later date, should the customers confirm they want them, and should Commission fund and approve that we proceed with that. So they're in a position to receive that, and the double-deckers are in the same state. They're able to receive cameras, and that's reflected in the cost estimates there. We have financial restrictions. As we all know, there's difficult decisions we need to make, and the Department is very cognizant of the mandate that you've given us to ensure that the long-term sustainable financial footing of OC Transpo is solid. So what we came up with was an incremental approach, that any future buses be purchased with onboard surveillance equipment and that they be operationalized immediately. The next bus order, which we're looking at, is we're receiving from the Rail Implementation Office, do we need more bus capacity to get us through the 5-year construction phase, and can we move portions of the fleet that are either mid-life or at end of life to take advantage of some of those procurement strategies. Depending on that, we'll know how many buses we need, and then we would spec those out with the capability to implement it over time, and that certainly eases the impact on the operating budget. For the numbers we're talking about, we would absorb the operating costs within the current parameters that we have. In addition to that, Madam Chair, we're listening to our stakeholders in the community about safety and how important that is for our operators and for our customers. And in our upcoming priority report in July, we're going to be bringing forward a 10-point plan. We've reached out to APTA, American Public Transit Association, and we're going to be recommending or looking at adopting their framework for an enhanced safety program that highlights all the things we do, and we do have to do a better job of promoting the safety initiatives that we have, such as the night stop. We should have ads in our buses. We've for some reason stopped those. We'll enhance that, and there's other good ideas, and we're going to overlay our equity and inclusion lens on our program to ensure that it's all-encompassing and it becomes a Made in Ottawa OC Transpo plan that reflects our community needs. And those details will be provided in our July report. Thank you, Madam Chair. That concludes the presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Manconi. There are no public delegations, but I will note for the commissioners that there were 2 pieces of correspondence received, one from Jan Lamb on June 18th, and the other also on June 18th from Mike Wright. So going to our first questioner, Commissioner Farabee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, John, for the presentation and for the detail, and I know that you take this very seriously and have done a lot of analysis on it. I had a couple of questions. The $10 million one-time charge, does that recur? Is it all capital costs has to be replaced, or is it just cameras, or is it rolling, or what is that number?
Madam Chair, that's the cost, all the hardware, software, and everything but the one-time implementation. So the one-time implementation example would be there's one-time training and fit-up and so forth. So that $10 million, when you're into replacement, could be a different number, and the price of cameras are dropping over time.
But you're replacing everything with that, the storage for the video stuff, the cables, the whole thing's all replaced?
It's an evolving industry. I don't know the extent of how much when we're into replacement, whether it's all of it or not. I'm looking to Mr. Delage. Is he in the room? There he is. I'll get him to comment on that in terms of what you're talking about when we're into the next replacement cycle. What would be replaced? Mr. Delage would be able to answer that.
Hi, Madam Chair. Given the condition on the market in terms of hard disk, when you look at a system that's been used for a period of time, like 6 years, we are at the point where we have to replace it. We have too many defects on a conventional hard disk for that.
So the whole thing is pulled out. Okay. Mm-hmm. The remote monitoring costs, and you were saying that they're given the 4 different options from the basic all the way up, and then we have remote monitoring. There's the cost, the technical cost of the remote monitoring, and then there's the actual monitoring. Are you proposing that we do the monitoring, or we just have the functionality to do it if we wanted to?
Madam Chair, the remote monitoring is if there was an event on the bus that occurs, it would be triggered into the system, and that would feed into the Transit Law Communications Center, and our communications officers would be able to watch the event live and dispatch appropriate resources as a result.
But you're not monitoring it or scanning or surveilling as it's all the time. It's only when there's an incident.
Madam Chair, that is correct.
You had said there was some question on fraudulent claims and what's the benefit. Have you also looked at the insurance savings, the insurance liability savings as a result of having the cameras?
No, we could not get any information from the other agencies on that. We asked them that question. We said, what are you saving on insurance claims? And other than they're saving money, they couldn't give us a number on that. Now, we have a follow-up with our claims people to see if they have any contacts that they could mine that information out on.
Does our insurance company provide, or our insurer provide us some insight as to what the savings would be?
No, we don't have that information.
Have you, did you consider third party going to, the way you've described this as an evolving industry, we see the cost curve coming down on cameras, there's big replacement stuff. Did you go to a third party to say, have somebody come in, put it in, monitor it, we don't take the big one-time cost, but they manage that on an ongoing basis, it becomes then added to the operating?
No, Madam Chair. Other than discussions with vendors, I did speak to one vendor myself in terms of that. I know that's being done in other jurisdictions in the States. at a very high level seemed very costly, and then we're into a whole bunch of privacy issues and whether we want that service where people are doing that. So no, not specifically costed out. It's out there. Whether or not it's cheaper, I can't answer that.
When you, in your stakeholder consultation, your list here, did you talk to victims groups or other people who were victims of crimes or any other kind of users or people who had suffered the downside of security risks?
No, Madam Chair, we intentionally did not do that, and sorry, I should have pointed that out in the consultation. This was all about the feasibility and the costing. Our strategy would have been if you approved a proceeding in principle, we would go out and consult even further on that if you wanted that to occur. We are having ongoing dialogue with various stakeholders on safety in general terms, and our signal to everyone in the community is with any of this stuff, we are going to consult with them in terms of how we roll out.
Okay, because the feasibility is balanced against the benefit, and as you outlined, there's some preventative measure benefit of this feature in isolation, but as part of an overall program, it can be quite effective. So it seems to me that security and safety is a programmatic approach, that we have to have lots of things, and if we evaluate each one independently, we'll never get to a point of having the full mix. So we need to see the other side, which is historically proven that there's, from prosecution perspective, it helps a lot. The benefit is that if you commit a crime on the bus, you'll be prosecuted and justice will be served. If you're a victim of violence, justice matters. That needs to be in balance to the feasibility cost, I think. It's not clear that that's the other part of this that would be missing if we don't do it.
No, and that's very well stated. I agree 100% with that. There's that whole relationship piece that's connected on that. And yes, enforcement rates went up. Yes, prosecution rates went up. But we have tried and we pushed hard to see other studies that draws that whole picture. Other than it needs to form part of a comprehensive program, there's nothing out there in terms of seeing that picture that you've just drawn, but I would agree with what you've said.
I mean, I don't envy your position. It's a conflict of fiscal prudence and safety and justice, and those aren't easy ones. But the decision to go incrementally like this and to go slowly, I'm finding it a tough one to swallow. I accept the price is also high. I'm just wondering if we fully explored all the options to do this to defer or diminish our capital costs and to make it to improve our operating costs. That's all, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Farabee. Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to preface my comments by noting how safe public transit is. It's much, much safer than driving a personal vehicle. Study after study proves this. However, even though it is extremely safe, incidents do occur, and one is too many, of course. Cameras can help, as noted, with prevention and with enforcement, and I appreciate that we have a number of costed options here. It was mentioned a couple of times in the report that consultations would take place with the privacy commissioners at the federal and provincial levels. Under this recommendation, given the comparisons made with other systems, because I see it varies greatly, can OC Transpo provide any information as to the likely retention period of footage taken by these cameras?
Madam Chair, we looked at all options, and we're looking at a 7-day cycle for retention.
All right. Pleased to hear that. Mr. Makoni posited that, this is from the report too, that surveillance systems by themselves do not contribute to an increased sense of safety and security. Now, I did a little bit of research of my own, and I found some peer-reviewed research in the journal Transportation Research Record as an example that showed, this is a study from Michigan that found that 70% of transit user respondents felt that onboard surveillance cameras made them feel more secure, including 40% who said it made them feel far more secure. Now, setting aside the validity of the conclusion in the report, I couldn't help but notice the wordplay going on, saying that cameras by themselves do not increase feelings of security. Like, no one's talking about putting on the cameras and taking out the special constables and other enforcement mechanisms. So I'm questioning the value that finding brings to the report, if not only to cast doubt on the urgency of installing the camera system. On page 3, it stated, research is inconclusive on the impact of surveillance cameras and the reduction of actual crime rates within the transit sector. Now, there was research in the academic journal Justice Quarterly that found that while CCTV systems in city centers decreased crime incidents by only 7%, the corresponding total for public transit was 23%. This was U.S. data, but does OC Transpo, I'm wondering, Madam Chair, does OC Transpo have any reason to believe that results would not be similarly positive in Ottawa? Like, on what basis was this conclusion reached by OC Transpo?
Madam Chair, we looked at the data and we were relying on the RCMP report that showed it's highest when used in conjunction with other crime reduction strategies. I do believe cameras does mitigate crime somewhat. However, it doesn't prevent it totally. It becomes a great evidentiary investigative tool after the fact.
Thank you. Like, I would point out that it was said that it does reduce crime, and that was not reflected in this report. Now, on the RCMP, the report prepared for the RCMP that was cited here, it's on page 3, it confirms the crime deterrent effects, in my opinion, on cameras. That was my read, and that continuing publicity is required to maintain the positive effects. It seems to me that awareness tools have to be go hand in hand with the camera installation of the cameras, both to increase feelings of security and to deter crime. It was referred to by Mr. Manconi in the PowerPoint as well. What are OC Transpo's plans on the awareness front should this recommendation go forward?
Madam Chair, the 10-point plan that I spoke about in the upcoming business priority plan will look at enhancing our safety program. We're looking at the APTA safety program framework, and as part of this, if you approve the recommendation that we do this incrementally, we will do a very significant awareness program and outreach that Commissioner Farabee talked about in terms of our stakeholders. We're engaging many of them as we speak right now, and we would do that outreach and communique and promotion and advertising and so forth.
It would be interesting to consider how long that might have to last, given the pace at which the incremental approach would take us. Now, the findings here say that surveillance systems should form part of our overall comprehensive safety program, incident deterrent through increased accountability, to quote from the report. Now, my reading from this report is that it's a great idea, but we don't have the money for it right now unless we raise fares. I would ask, why automatically resort to raising fares? We have to remember that non-users are among the greatest beneficiaries of transit usage. When you look at the enforcement positives, as well as decreased congestion, faster commutes, air quality, lower demand on gasoline, that sort of thing. Now, that was just a comment, not a question. But the report also says that and Mr. Manconi mentioned this as well in detail, that the O-Train and Confederation line will have surveillance systems. Now, I'm curious, will they have option 3 as recommended here, or is this, which is remote downloading and remote monitoring, or is that still TBD?
Madam Chair, it's the same thing. Option 3, yes.
And is this one of the primary reasons why option 3 was recommended to the Commission?
No, option 3 was based on the input from the team, the consultation that we had, and then it was subsequently challenged by myself in terms of, because I was worried we were having too much of an enhanced system, and I asked them to push it down to option 2 and option 1 in terms of pricing. So option 3 is the preferred from a technical perspective, from the input from the consultation group. And then we subsequently pushed it down. I was concerned, was it too much? And as I mentioned in my comments, it doesn't drive down the cost significantly.
I had a similar reaction. We have here the cost of option 3. It says on page 7 explicitly, as you mentioned, that option 1 was costed and it didn't result in much savings. There's manual replacements of the hard drive and so forth, obviously labor intensive. However, I was looking at option 2. It wouldn't include that necessity. Was option 2 costed at all? Was option 3, why was option 3 recommended over option 2? It's base system and remote downloading I'm looking at. What would be the cost difference there, given the reduced labor intensity?
It will be extremely minimal. As Mr. Manconi mentioned, Madam Chair, the infrastructure presently on the bus enable us to get the information, whether it's the downloading or having access to it upon emergency alarm. All the infrastructure to get access to the streaming is available to us now. So hence, I mean, there's no much difference. The system needs to be monitored, otherwise we will have to do that manually, which is not an option. We'll have to increase the number of people to do that kind of thing. So the remote monitoring makes the most sense in terms of the lowest amount of people to maintain this system over the lifetime of it.
All right, thank you. Just keeping an eye on my time here. I noticed that the cost is broken down by articulated buses, double-deckers, and so forth. I was wondering, was there any consideration given to breaking down the cost in a way that would show, for example, installing them on buses that are halfway through their service life and less? Why was it broken down only by type of bus and not based on their service life?
Madam Chair, the average life of the fleet is 4.7 years, I believe, because you did a major purchase recently. So I'm not certain there's any advantage to doing that. We certainly could. The portion of the fleet that's reaching midlife is the hybrid vehicles, but they're here, our vehicles your financial plan is a 15-year life cycle on vehicles, so the majority of your fleet is here to stay for a while.
All right, just to finish, Madam Chair, but like I know with the Confederation line, there's no major plans to bring in new buses, and so this incremental approach, I feel, is we're looking at possibly a decade or beyond. I do like that I appreciate the information brought to the Commission, but I feel that it's more intended at putting the project on the back burner indefinitely, so I'm not pleased with this recommendation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Commissioner Egley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to put this in perspective, Mr. Manconi, we do customer survey, satisfaction surveys, and what are people's concerns. In our most recent, where does safety rank in terms of concerns for users?
Madam Chair, I'm just looking at Mr. Scrimger, see if he has that. If you could give us a few minutes, he'll see if he can pull it off.
Sure, I can move on to some other questions. While he's looking at that, I was just trying to put the whole debate in some context. So if I understand what you're suggesting, your approach would not raise any fares at this point in time. Am I correct in assuming that the O-Train, the Confed line, and the Paratranspo, where there will be cameras scoped in for them, that's money that's already planned and budgeted for? That won't show any increase on the budget lines?
Correct.
I have a question about the sort of how the information could be used. And I guess my first question is, I think we did get an answer as to what the retention time was going to be, which is 7 days. Is that the industry standard?
Madam Chair, can I get legal to comment first and Jim Babe to overlay the industry? I'm just trying to bring all the elements to the table.
Madam Chair, just from a legal background, retention time is something we must look at in terms of protection of privacy obligations, both under the federal legislation and the provincial one.
Can you speak right into the microphone?
Pardon me. Thanks. Just to confirm, retention periods are something we must address in terms of privacy obligations, both under the federal legislation and the provincial one. There's no, from a legal perspective, there's no set time, but we must be able to justify the retention period that we choose in terms of being tied to real operational requirements. I believe that the various systems that exist have various retention times depending on the uses, and perhaps Chief Babe can answer that from an operational perspective.
Yes, it's very wide-ranging in the industry right now. It goes anywhere from 24 hours up to 12 days currently. The reason we looked at 7 days was to take into account when you have a long weekend period, etc. So, for example, the Easter long weekend, which is 4 days, that we could capture those events. Should be pointed out that if there is an event that's triggered on the bus through the system, Madam Chair, that once it's saved, we have it as a record forever, essentially, until life cycle in terms of evidentiary causes its destruction.
Well, that was going to be my question, because I'm looking at who was consulted, and I don't see Ottawa Police is one of the groups that was consulted. Maybe I've missed it. And my concern was if an incident which charges are going to come out of, what's their input and how long we should, but I think you've just answered that. The charges are laid and the process starts, then we're going to hold on to it. Okay. In terms of another group that could be impacted by this, both in a good and a bad way, potentially, are the drivers themselves. And has there been any discussion with the union in terms of whatever is filmed is filmed? In other words, it's there for people's safety and protection, but potentially it also could be used in, for example, in a grievance hearing. If there's a complaint against a driver for a particular, or any other OC Transpo employee for a particular behavior that took place on a bus. Has that discussion happened, and where are we with the union on that particular issue?
Yes, Madam Chair, we've had very good discussion with ATU 279. Mr. Watson and myself actually talked about this, and there is a clear understanding that the cameras are there to protect everyone. And I think you're seeing some very positive shift in concerns over camera use for operators, because there are many, some of these jurisdictions have pulled the tape where there's been a dispute and everyone's blaming the operator, and when you look at the video, there's actually something the customer was doing that was inappropriate. So it works both ways, and we've given ATU assurances that this is not Big Brother watching you, but we will be covering the entire bus, and that's good for the customers and good for the operators, and that's our focus.
So I go back to the police question in a sense. So if a complaint comes in against an OC Transpo employee, will that footage also be taken and archived and held until the grievance process or a complaint process runs its full course?
Absolutely, and yes, OPS was, police services was consulted as part of the process.
Okay. Can we get back to my initial question about where safety ranked as a concern for residents?
Thanks for the time, Madam Chair. There's about 4 points that people made in their response to the customer survey, and for some of these we have the general directions, and we can follow up by email with the actual numbers and citations from the survey. Customers do say overall that OC Transpo is safe and secure. About 90% of customers feel safe and secure when they are on OC Transpo. Between 60 and 70% of people, however, when they're asked a number of questions about how they feel and where they feel safe and secure, one of the reasons they feel safe and secure is because of the presence of video surveillance at the stations as we have it today. It's not, the safety and security is not one of, it's a thing that, it's an attribute that they feel that OC Transpo has rather than a major point for improvement. And we can follow up with particular quotes from the survey when we get back to the office and have the documentation at our hands.
Okay, thank you for that. And one other question on the retention and the use of the video, and this is something that legal, I think, can best handle, but could be wrong. If a tape of an incident occurs and it's held, what's the amphipability of that? In other words, we have the media sitting here today. They will file requests. And they're waving at me right now. They will file requests on a whole variety of things that go through the city in terms of emails and memos and communications of all sorts. Where does this fit into that?
It would depend on the circumstance, Madam Chair, but generally speaking, if it was, for example, if the tape was pulled for civil litigation, for example, litigation privilege would probably apply to it. We'd have to look at it on a case-by-case. If the matter was before the courts and hadn't yet been introduced as evidence in open court, and if it was being used for a law enforcement matter, whether it was at provincial bylaw, city bylaw level or criminal code level, we would likely look at the matter and see whether or not a law enforcement exemption would apply. In that case, we might want to do that. There's certainly the ability to do that under MFIPA, but again, it depends on the circumstances. I think the bottom line would be an internal reflection and analysis of whether or not disclosure would harm any ongoing investigation, first of all, with our transit law or with OPS. Secondly, whether disclosure would prejudice a matter that's presently before the courts. And then lastly, whether some sort of privilege, whether it's litigation privilege or other privilege would apply. MFIPA does address those issues. So there is the ability to withhold that from disclosure should a formal MFIPA request comes in. And we'd certainly look at each case very carefully.
And sort of a follow-up question on that, what protection, I realize this is years from now in terms of when it's actually going to end up on the buses, but it'll be on the trains and what have you sooner than that. What internal protections are going to be built into the system so that, you know, anybody can upload anything now to YouTube? So what internally are we going to have built in so that sort of things don't leak, things like that, which should be protected by privacy legislation, don't suddenly end up on the net?
This system, I mean, will have its own system and access. It will be restricted only, I mean, at people that needs to know. So basically, transit law and OPS. Nobody else will have access to that system. It will be on its own separate entity, I mean, for storage of video.
Okay, thank you. Final question for Mr. Manconi. So if I understand this report, if we approve your recommendations today, we're not approving any new money for some years to come. Is that accurate?
Madam Chair, that's correct. The funding for the new buses in relation to the Confederation line already exists. You approve that when you approve the LRT budget. There's an envelope there in the event that we need buses for that, and we would build that into it already exists.
So can you give me your best estimate? I know we've had a lot of timing questions this morning, but can you give me your best estimate as to when we would need to get into new money to implement this plan? You talked earlier about the ages of our buses and that sort of thing.
Madam Chair, Rail Implementation Office, end of June, early July, is giving us the detour information. We will overlay, we'll know how many buses we need for Confederation Line July, August. Then we're overlaying that in terms of the entire life cycle of the vehicles, like the hybrids that are at midlife. And then the issue is, are we swapping out or advancing? And our goal is not to need new money for that, so we'd build those surveillance cameras into that, and it would be a while before you'd see another wave of new buses. Mr. Scrimgeour and the team is building their 2018 operational plan for the Confederation line, and then we'll know how many buses we're taking out of the fleet, and or do we need new types of buses and so forth. So it'd be a while before we would need new money on new fleet acquisitions.
Am I putting your feet to the fire if I say it will be at least 2018 before you need new money for this?
Did I mention I hate dates?
I know you hate dates, but it is a lot of money when you go forward, so we're trying to get a sense as to when that might happen, and can we turn our minds to other ways to fund that other than simply increasing people's fares? The more time we have to think about it, the more time we have to come up with ideas.
Madam Chair, perhaps I can answer the question this way, is that this strategy does not request new money, and we'll know better once we see the rollout of the Confederation line. I don't anticipate that'll be any time soon. I apologize. I can't commit to it.
No, I appreciate your honesty. I think I will be buying you a calendar for your birthday, but I do appreciate your honesty. Thank you.
He hates dates, so he's not going to tell you when his birthday is. Thank you, Commissioner Aguilar. Commissioner Crew.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first thing I'd like to address is the selection of the recommendation of, if you will, option number 3, as is presented on slide 11, which is the remote monitoring option. I was privileged enough to be able to participate in that consultation that is with the groups referred to on slide number 6. And when the straw poll was taken at the end of the day initially, there was one dissenting vote in favor of option 1 or 2, and that was the vote of yours truly, whereas all the rest of the professionals there were in favor of the option 3 with remote monitoring. And one of my concerns certainly was the cost differential between the modes. So I'm pleased to hear, I guess, that you challenged the preference of option number 3 in favor of a cheaper option, and what we're hearing is that there are no significant cost savings to be made by going with a lesser option. I'm also looking, though, at the number of transit systems that are reported on slide 5, and what I note is that the vast majority of them, there's one exception, have no remote monitoring. But there's the note at the bottom of the slide that a growing number of U.S. jurisdictions are implementing systems with remote monitoring. So is it accurate to say that more systems, that the reason why more systems are going towards remote monitoring now is simply because the technologies are getting better, and so it's easier to do remote monitoring?
Mr. Chair, indeed, the technology that is getting more and more available, and most of the transit agencies that are moving forward are looking at moving to a system that does not require manual intervention on bus to acquire evidence. So they are all going to remote monitoring, remote downloading. I did have a conversation recently with Marta in Atlanta, and all their system now is remote download and remote monitor for that reason, because they save a lot of dollars in going after manual video. So the technology is more and more available. In our case here, because we are already on the smart bus new generation, we have already an extended cellular network on our buses, we are already at that level. And most authority will tell you if they have that system, I mean, that's what they will prefer to use.
And I understand that one of the reasons why the cost would not, there would be no significant cost savings, a lesser option, is that our bus fleet is so new that it already has the capacity and the bandwidth to support remote monitoring as soon as the cameras are there without further modification. Is that correct?
That is correct. Because of, again, we had implemented the new generation of smart bus with all our buses connected to cellular network. This direct connectivity is already in existence right now and has the capacity to handle the system that we are talking about.
And finally then, Mr. Manconi made reference to the fact that to trigger active as opposed to passive monitoring would require a triggering event. That would be something therefore done by the operator. Is that how it operates? Is that how it works?
It might be that, and can also be triggered upon a abnormal G-force. We have that on the bus. So there's in the video system that exists today, if you have abnormal G-force that you have, for example, when you have accident and things like that, then it's triggering, an event, and the data is flagged for downloading automatically.
And so if a customer sort of pressed an emergency strip or something too, that might be a triggering event as well, depending on the capability, for example, in a Confederation Line train to have that.
That is correct.
Okay. I guess for my commission colleagues, I could say, having been skeptical about the technology that was recommended, I'm now supporting that as well of the options that were presented. The next questions, perhaps for Mr. Manconi, relate to the education programs sort of surrounding safety on the buses. I know at heart that's what we're talking about. And I know that there have been some ongoing consultations with anti-violence organizations. I can mention, for example, with the Ottawa Coalition to End Violence Against Women, as well as Hollaback certainly had some meetings with the Commission about this. And one of their messages, violence prevention organizations, was that cameras alone wouldn't protect us, but rather they wanted an education program that's saying safety on the buses is everyone's responsibility. It's operators' responsibilities, riders' responsibilities, and that what we really need is kind of an engaged ridership. So I guess what I'm asking is, given the timelines that may or may not just have been outlined, is there a plan in place to do something like what those organizations have been asking in terms of a public education campaign to say, not that we don't have cameras right now, but that we would like everybody to be active in terms of protecting people's safety on the buses?
Yes, Madam Chair, we're meeting with a number of those groups. I believe later this week the Chair has asked us to arrange that meeting, and the Chair has asked us to even further broaden that view, and you're going to be seeing some upcoming reports about how we want to apply the equity and inclusion lens to just about everything that we do at OC Transpo. And so it is that bringing everybody together and getting their ideas, because they are bringing some very good ideas to the table that we want to leverage.
Okay. The recommendation that is on the floor, it causes a classic tension in decisions between safety on the buses and trying to keep the fares minimized. I know that Commissioner Farabee in his entire term has been very active about trying to promote safety issues wherever they are, whereas I've often been someone that speaks out in favor of trying to keep the fares as low as possible. I guess my largest outstanding concern with the report and the recommendation as tabled is that there is, and Commissioner Johnson, Commissioner Egley have highlighted this, there's an awful lot of policy work that is simply, it seems, left to staff as opposed to brought back to the commission. So, for example, what are the what do the privacy organizations say about it? What is the policy in terms of access and retention? What is the view for union concerns? So I'm wondering if you would take it as a direction to staff that before any active cameras are installed, that policy could be brought back to and presented to this commission for approval instead of simply allowing staff to work out all the details.
Yes, absolutely, Madam Chair. We would bring if you approve this recommendation, we would bring that back, and legal has talked to us about that we should certainly be doing that. We'd bring the whole policy framework back for your approval on that.
Okay, and then recognizing that tension, I could say with that direction to staff and that protection provided in, that it would be the commission that would be approving the important policies piece to go along with this. I'm otherwise in favor of this recommendation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Crew. Commissioner Wilkinson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to go back to the funding of this, because you said that if we did this right now, it would raise fares. And yet our policy is that it just varies between 50 and 55%, but the fares are based on a percentage of operating costs, not capital. Capital is not funded from fares. The only operating in here is the actual running of the system. The actual installation wouldn't be. So why are you saying it would raise fares for the capital? I would have to find the money somewhere. That's a different question.
Madam Chair, on the page 6 of your report, under ongoing operating costs, you have a range of low-end $240K per year to $920,000 in operating costs. That has been overlaid on the range that I've given you there, 0.18% to 0.7% annually, depending on the fleet option that you select. You are absolutely correct, Councillor Wilkinson. It's on operating only.
All right. And we have increases in costs in our operating every year, whether it's fuel or anything else. And I really think we should try to, I'd like to have this move a little bit further. And I was wondering if it's possible, because the ones we're going to get are on trains. Those are coming automatically. And maybe if we have to order more buses, but that's a maybe. Could we do it just say on 10 buses? I would say articulated, because they're the ones I think we need them the most. And have a chance to try them. We did a trial on the double-deckers to try them for a year or two to see if they'd work here. If we got 10 systems, that would not be a huge capital cost. The operating cost for the actual central thing is going to be there anyway for the O train and the Confederation line. You're going to have the ability to view it and all of that. That's there anyway. So I don't know what the incremental cost would be if you had a few, but I really think we should be testing this, and I'd like to know what you think about that and what type of impact that would have.
Madam Chair, I think that's exactly what we're proposing with the Confederation line bus requirement. So that range, we don't know what that number is, but it would do exactly that. It would bring a portion of the fleet equipped with surveillance cameras, and we do exactly what you just talked about.
What if they come back and say we don't need any more buses? Just fix the ones we've got.
Then we'd have to find a funding strategy for the capital. If it's 10 buses, we'd have to go and seek direction on that through whip closure or something like that. We could do that. Our approach is wait for June, July. Let's see how many buses we need for the Confederation line, and we'd spec them with the cameras.
I don't mind the waiting to see if it is, but if there aren't any needed, then we wouldn't be paying for those new buses. We would have the ability to get some funds, I would think. Or is that coming from a different pot?
Yes, Madam Chair. I just want you to know that I've had very frank discussions with the Treasurer, and the capital reserve for transit services, she would want clear direction from the Commission that you're going to direct us to for the capital account on where that funding would come from if that was something that you wanted to do.
But
there is no capital for this right now.
Where is the money coming from if we need additional buses because of the Confederation?
You have a $63 million envelope that you've approved as part of the Confederation line to handle bus operations during the 5-year build, and that pool of money is approved for us to do detours management, add service, and to buy buses in the event that we need them. Prior to the paralleling of the transitway strategy, that could have been very significant. Now that there's a paralleling system that has been done as part of that procurement strategy, the number of buses we'll need is less than before, but that's the detail that Mr. Scrimger and the Rail Implementation Office are working on right now.
So you'll report on that to us in the fall, so I'll wait until then to see how much that's coming. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Wilkinson. Commissioner Farabee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, thank you for bringing this question up, and Commissioner Crew outlines the tension that it creates, and that's really our job to sort out which is the priority here. In my view, the recommendation doesn't strike that right balance, that this is important, that we often speak about safety and security being our first priority, and then when it comes in conflict with something else, it becomes second or third. It can't be our first priority and be our second and third priority. It's often difficult and it's challenging, and I think we should be challenged to find the material or the opportunity to make this work. If we mean that as being our priority, then we need to find that, and that's really to my colleagues. So thank you for bringing it up, but I'm not going to be able to support this. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Farabee. Commissioner Ron.
Thank you. I mean, I won't go over some of what I see to be, and what some of my colleagues have already gone over, to be some potential gaps in information, such important things like what kind of insurance costs we might potentially be saving, that are clearly missing in the report. But also, when I look at the report, I look at this as we're looking at, we're looking at the cost of this, and I can't look at it as just the cost. To me, we have to look at it with the other lens on this, and that is how important safety is, and the feeling of safety on a bus, and justice and prevention of crimes. And when I look at this report, I don't think that it is taking into account all of those other factors. And you look at, I think all you need to do is we look at the recommendation, which the Transit Commission is being asked to approve that the surveillance system be implemented incrementally on a go-forward basis for new buses. However, when you read the report and you see that, and if you know that we have a very new fleet of buses, and that we may or may not actually require new buses to, when we're looking ahead to the Confederation line and dealing with accommodation there. This is essentially, we're being asked to make a decision to defer having any video surveillance on our bus fleet for potentially years and years and years. And that to me is troubling in light of the gaps in some of the information. I think that we owe it to our riders and the people that use the system to really look at this in a little more detail. So I'm not going to be able to support this recommendation.
Is that it, Commissioner Ron? Thank you. Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I echo the comments of Commissioners Farabee and Ron, certainly. Now, on the matter of paying for this as well, as a citizen commissioner, I have a bit more flexibility to ask these questions. It says that fares would need to be increased in order to pay for more rapid camera installation. Why is the recommendation to increase the funding of OC Transpo operations for this from user fees rather than from general city revenue?
Sorry, Madam Chair, I don't understand the question.
In the recommendation, it says that funding the operation costs would add 0.18 to 0.7% annually to fund the operating costs. Why is it assumed that these would be paid for by user fees rather than property taxes?
You have a fare box policy that deals with that. It's there's an operating, all your operating costs, it's back to Councillor Wilkinson's question, operating costs are recovered, and there's a target to recover from the fare box ratio as much of the operating costs as you can. We're currently at 51%. The goal over time is to achieve 55%. So we cost things out through the operating, and we look at what it would do to the fare box impact.
So the only reason was because we're not currently at that 55%?
No, the reason is that's your policy.
No. Now, the study that OC Transpo did found that video surveillance capabilities are an invaluable investigative tool. Because we're using this to help combat crime, is it the opinion of OC Transpo that the OPS could be approached to help with funding the installation and operation of these cameras?
Madam Chair, I cannot speak on behalf of OPS. We'd have to ask them on that, but I would suspect they have the same financial challenges that we do.
I'm not asking Mr. Manconi to speak on behalf of OPS, but rather on behalf of OC Transpo. Is it his recommendation that the OPS could be approached to help pay for what is essentially part of their job, enforcing crime?
Again, sorry, I don't understand the question. Is it, should we be asking OPS to fund this?
In your opinion, given the nature of the system we're bringing in and the relevance to the OPS, would OC Transpo suggest approaching OPS to help pay for it?
Madam Chair, I think that's a political question. I'm not in a position to recommend that.
Very well. Now, finally, with regard to what Commissioner Farabee said, obviously safety is our top priority, and I feel that this recommendation is a recommendation to delay. I get the feeling I'm going to be old and gray by the time our fleet is equipped with cameras under this recommendation. On page 8 of the report, it says that it acknowledges that over the next few years, new bus requirements will be minimal, and with the Confederation line, it may even go down. When would it be anticipated? Apologies if you've covered this, but I don't think it was. And for the benefit of the Commission, when would you anticipate that? When would OC Transpo anticipate that the entire fleet would be equipped with cameras? Should this recommendation be approved?
Madam Chair, back to what I was mentioning earlier on, the analysis that needs to be done is what do we need for the Confederation line? What does 2018 look like in terms of the overall fleet? And we're overlaying the midlife hybrid renewals that we need to do, and that information is what we're currently working on, so we don't have all those pieces yet, because the tipping point is, there's 2 tipping points. How many buses do we need for Confederation Line detours, and what does 2018 look like, remembering that when Confederation Line opens, you will have less buses on the road. That's part of your business plan and the financial model on that. So we're not quite there yet, so we couldn't tell you, but it is over years. There's no doubt about that.
Okay, well, I do agree with the recommendation in terms of the model to proceed with, but I am not comfortable with the time frame we're looking at. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Are there any other comments or questions on the report? So on the recommendation, I think I'm going to call yeas and nays.
Commissioner Blais? Commissioner Blois? Commissioner Eglai?
Yes.
Commissioner Hobbs? Commissioner Tierney?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilkinson?
Yes.
Commissioner Crew?
Yes.
Commissioner Farabee? No. Commissioner Johnson?
No.
Commissioner Ron?
No.
Commissioner Kadri? Chair Deans?
Yes, the motion carries. Okay, notices of motion? Seeing none, inquiries? Seeing none, other business? Adjourned. Thank you.